The screaming had stopped 3 hours ago. That was never a good sign. High Inquisitor Morith walked through the organic corridors of the interrogation station, his gray robes brushing against walls that pulsed with telepathic energy. In 200 years of service to the Varanthi hegemony, he had broken over 10,000 minds. Every species eventually screamed. Every species eventually begged. Every species eventually shattered like glass under the weight of their own fears. But the human in Cell 7 had gone quiet. Report, Morith said to his apprentice, Paleth, who stood nervously outside the cell door. He stopped responding to preliminary fear induction 90 minutes ago. High Inquisitor. Paleth's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. His vital signs remained stable. Heart rate actually decreased. Morith felt something he had not experienced in decades. Curiosity. The Varanthi had conquered 37 species using mind combat. The technique was simple and devastating. Enter the victim's consciousness, find their deepest fears, and trap them in nightmare loops until their psyche crumbled like wet paper. Most beings lasted 6 hours. The strongest lasted 2 days. None had ever resisted. Humans were new to the galaxy. 3 months into first contact, and already they were proving troublesome. This one, Danny Reeves, had been captured during a rescue mission. His patrol ship had been destroyed, his crew killed. He was alone, wounded, and far from home. Perfect conditions for breaking. Morith entered the cell. The human sat in the neural interface chair, metal restraints holding his arms and legs. Tubes connected to his temples fed directly into the psychic amplification system. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and steady. He looked almost peaceful. Human, Morith said, I'm told you to stop screaming. Danny opened his eyes. They were brown, unremarkable, but there was something in them that made Morith pause. Not fear, not defiance, something else entirely. Yeah, Danny said. Sorry about that. I figured out what was happening. You figured out nothing. You experienced a fraction of what awaits you. No, I figured out it wasn't real. Danny shifted slightly in his restraints. Took me a minute, but once I realized it was basically a really intense dream, I just did what I always do. Morith stepped closer. What you always do. I've been lucid dreaming since I was 19. 15 years of practice. Danny smiled slightly. Once I know I'm dreaming, I could do pretty much anything. This was impossible. The mind combat technique bypassed conscious awareness. Victims could not recognize the unreality of their nightmare prison. The psychic architecture prevented it. You lie, Morith said. No species has ever taken control within mind combat. Maybe no species ever learned how to dream properly. Morith made a decision. He would enter this human's mind personally. He would show him what true psychic power looked like. He would shatter whatever delusion allowed Danny Reeves to smile in the face of Varanthi interrogation. Paleth, Morith called. Increase amplification to full capacity. I am going in myself. High Inquisitor, at full capacity. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. This creature is confused, nothing more. I will demonstrate the difference between dreaming and true mind combat. Morith sat in the secondary interface chair, tubes connected to his own temples. The psychic link established itself, and reality began to blur. He found himself standing in a burning city. Good. The preliminary probes had done their work. This was Danny Reeves' childhood trauma, a house fire that had killed his grandmother. The flames roared, the smoke choked, and somewhere in the inferno, a child was crying. Impressive, Morith said aloud, knowing the human could hear him. Your fear is vivid. It will make your breaking all the more complete. He waited for the screaming to begin. Instead, he watched the flames flicker and change color. Orange became gold. Gold became amber. The roaring fire softened into something else entirely. The burning buildings transformed into autumn trees, their leaves drifting gently in a warm breeze. Danny Reeves walked out of the transformed landscape, hands in his pockets. Yeah, this memory used to give me nightmares every week, he said casually. Then I learned that fire and dreams can become anything you want. Autumn's my favorite season. Morith felt something cold settle in his chest. This was not resistance. This was not denial. This was control. The human was reshaping mind combat itself. You cannot do this, Morith said, his voice less steady than before. The shaping is absolute. The victim cannot alter the constructed reality. I'm not altering your reality, Danny said. I'm building my own. There's a difference. He looked around at the peaceful forest that now surrounded them. This is nice, actually, but I've got somewhere better in mind. The forest dissolved. They stood in a small wooden cabin. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace. Two comfortable chairs faced each other, a small table between them. Outside the window, mountains stretched toward a pink and orange sunset. Danny sat in one of the chairs and gestured to the other. You want it inside my head, he said. Welcome. Want some coffee? Morith stood frozen. In 200 years, no mind had ever done this. No species had ever looked at Varanthi's psychic warfare and decided to offer hospitality instead of horror. The human was still smiling. Why is he smiling? Morith whispered to himself. And for the first time in his ancient life, he did not know the answer. Morith refused the coffee. He stood in the cabin that should not exist, staring at the human who should have been a broken shell by now. The fire crackled. The sunset painted the mountains gold. Everything felt real, solid, lived in. This is impossible, Morith said. You keep saying that. Danny sipped from a cup that had appeared in his hand. But here we are. Morith gathered his psychic energy. He had been gentle so far, using only basic fear induction. Now he would show this creature what 2 centuries of mind-breaking had taught him. He struck. The cabin shattered. The mountains crumbled. Danny fell through endless darkness, the ground gone from beneath his feet. This was the second technique, the void of isolation. Victims fell forever, alone, unable to touch anything solid. The silence drove them mad within hours. Danny fell for perhaps 10 seconds. Then he stopped. Morith watched in disbelief as the human simply floated in the darkness, looking around with mild interest. Ah, the falling dream, Danny said. Classic. I used to have these all the time. He tilted his body horizontal, then pushed off against nothing. He began to fly. The trick is realizing there's no ground to hit. Once you understand that, falling becomes flying. He swooped through the void like a bird. Laughing, Morith tried the third technique. Water. Danny found himself deep beneath a dark ocean, pressure crushing him, lungs burning, unable to find the surface. Danny looked around at the blackness, felt the weight of water above him, and made a decision. The cold ocean became warm. The crushing depth became a comfortable bath. He surfaced in a pool surrounded by steam and stone, some kind of natural hot spring. This is actually nice, Danny called out. You should try relaxing sometime. Morith unleashed every technique he knew. Fire that burned without consuming. Insects that crawled inside the skin. Loved ones who spoke with hatred. Teeth falling out. Being chased by something that could never be seen. Danny transformed each one. Fire became candles at a birthday party. Insects became butterflies. Loved ones became a memory of his mother, singing him to sleep. Missing teeth became a childhood photo where he grinned with gaps in his smile. The unseen pursuer became a game of hide and seek that Danny won by simply standing still. You do not understand what you are doing, Morith said, his voice cracking. This is not resistance. This is not denial. What is this? Danny sat on a bench that had not existed a moment before. The void around them had become a park, green grass and tall trees, and a playground in the distance. It's dreaming, Danny said simply. Real dreaming. Not nightmares, not predictions, just pure imagination. I've been practicing since I was a teenager. Every night, I go to sleep and I build worlds. But why? Why would any species waste mental energy on such foolishness? Because it's fun. Danny smiled. Because sometimes you want to fly, or breathe underwater, or visit places that don't exist. Because imagination makes the hard parts of life bearable. Morith felt his certainty crumbling. The Varanthi did not dream like this. Their sleep brought prophetic visions and psychic combat training. They saw the future where they practiced war. There is no building, no creating, no play. Your species dreams only of fear, Danny continued. I'm guessing that's not on purpose. I'm guessing that's just how your minds work. But humans are different. We dream of everything. Good things, bad things, impossible things. He paused. We make stuff up for the joy of making it up. This is a weakness, Morith insisted. Fantasy is not strength. Really, Danny stood and stretched. Because right now, I'm inside my own mind, talking to an ancient psychic torturer, and I'm completely comfortable. You've thrown everything you have at me, and I'm having a pretty good time. Morith had no answer. Here's the thing, Danny said. I'm not just defending myself. I'm not just surviving. I'm showing you something your people have never seen. He spread his arms, and the park shifted. New elements appeared. A sunset borrowed from a different memory. A smell of cooking food from his childhood. The sound of his father's laughter from years ago. I'm showing you what imagination looks like. Morith stared at the constructed world. It was beautiful. It was impossible. It was completely, utterly human. You cannot break me, Danny said softly. My mind is not a prison you can trap me in. It's a canvas. It's a playground. It's home. He met Morith's eyes directly. And right now, you're a guest. So maybe we should start over. He held out his hand. I am Danny. I'm a rescue specialist from Earth. I like building things in my dreams. I hate cold coffee, and I never wanted to fight anyone. What's your name? Morith looked at the extended hand. In 200 years, no victim had ever asked his name. They had begged. They had screamed. They had cursed him in 1,000 languages. None had ever offered friendship. I am High Inquisitor Morith, he said slowly. I have broken 10,000 minds. That sounds lonely, Danny said. Want to see something better? And despite everything he knew, everything he had been taught, Morith found himself nodding. 3 more Inquisitors entered Danny's mind an hour later. Morith had called for reinforcement. Not because he feared the human, he told himself, but because this phenomenon required study. The hegemony needed to understand how one primitive creature could resist their greatest weapon. Paleth came first, young and nervous. Then came Rithek, a veteran of 100 planetary subjugations. Finally, Seleth, the quietest of Morith's apprentices, whose 4 eyes always seemed to be looking at something no one else could see. They found Danny sitting in his cabin, playing some kind of card game against himself. More guests, Danny said cheerfully. Pull up a chair. I'm still figuring out the rules myself. This is not a social visit, Rithek growled. His psychic energy was already gathering, darker and more brutal than Morith's precise techniques. I have broken species that your planet has not yet discovered. You will shatter like all the others. Rithek attacked without warning. The cabin exploded into chaos. Danny found himself in a war zone. Explosions everywhere, bodies of his fallen friends scattered around him. His patrol ship burned in the distance. His crew screamed his name as they died again and again. Danny's hand shook. This one hurt. These were real memories, not abstract fears. He had held his friends as they died. He had smelled the smoke and the blood. Yes, Rithek hissed. This is real. This happened. You cannot transform truth into fantasy. Danny closed his eyes. The screaming continued. The explosions continued. The smell of death filled his nostrils. But then he did something unexpected. He stopped fighting. Instead of transforming the nightmare, he simply stood in the middle of it and let the memories wash over him. He had grieved for his crew. He had attended their funerals in his mind 1,000 times. The pain was real, but it was not endless. I miss them, Danny said quietly. Every day. But they wouldn't want me to stay in this moment forever. The war zone began to fade. Not because Danny erased it, but because he accepted it. The burning ship became a memorial. The scattered bodies became photographs on a wall. The screaming became a moment of silence. What are you doing? Rithek demanded. You cannot simply choose to stop feeling pain. I'm not stopping it. I'm holding it. Danny opened his eyes. There's a difference between being controlled by your memories and carrying them with you. My friends are gone. That's real. But they're also still with me. That's real too. Seleth stepped forward, her expression unreadable. You transformed grief into memorial. I didn't transform anything. I just made room for both things to be true at once. Morith watched this exchange with growing unease. This was not resistance. This was not even control. This was something entirely outside his understanding. Paleth tried next, forcing Danny into a nightmare of isolation, a white void where nothing existed and no one would ever come. Humans were social creatures. Surely loneliness would break him. Danny looked around at the endless white and shrugged. I spent 3 months alone on a recovery mission once, he said. You learn to enjoy your own company. He began to hum a song. The void was still empty, but somehow it felt less oppressive. Also, I can make my own company. A figure appeared beside him. Then another. Then more. Imaginary friends, characters from stories, echoes of people he had known. None of them were real, but Danny talked to them anyway, laughed with them, created entire conversations out of nothing. He is talking to phantoms, Paleth said, horrified. He has gone mad. No, Seleth said softly. He is creating. He makes companions from thought alone. Danny heard her and turned. You sound different from the others. Seleth hesitated. Among the Varanthi, curiosity was considered dangerous. Questions led to doubt, and doubt led to failure. But she had always wondered about things she was not supposed to wonder about. How do you make things? She asked. Things that are not real. Things that have no prophecy, no purpose. Danny smiled. You just imagine them. You think about what you want to see, and then you see it. Show me. Morith started to object, but Danny was already moving. The white void became a canvas. Colors swirled into existence, shapes forming from nothing, a world building itself piece by piece. Start with something simple, Danny said. A light. Just think about light. Seleth concentrated. A small glow appeared before her, flickering and uncertain. Her eyes widened. I made that, she whispered. I made something that was not there before. That's imagination, Danny said. That's dreaming. And once you learn how to do it, you can make anything. Morith watched his apprentice create light in a human's mindscape, and he felt the foundations of everything he believed begin to crack. This changes nothing, he said. One human's tricks will not save your species. But even he could hear the doubt in his own voice. The other prisoners started dreaming on the third day. Danny did not know how it happened at first. He was deep inside his own mindscape, teaching Seleth how to build a forest when he felt something strange. Other minds were touching his. Not attacking, not invading, just reaching out like cold hands seeking warmth. Someone else is here, Danny said. Seleth nodded. The psychic amplifiers connect all prisoners on this station. Your dreaming is leaking through the network. Danny concentrated and found them. A Tessithi woman, her people conquered 20 years ago, trapped in endless nightmares of her burning homeworld. A karate soldier, massive and proud, crying in his sleep as he relived the death of his children. A dozen other minds from a dozen other species, all suffering, all alone. Danny reached out to the Tessithi woman first. Her nightmare was simple and devastating. She stood in a field of ash, watching her village burn over and over again. She had stood in this moment for years. Hey, Danny said gently. She spun around, terrified. Who are you? Another torturer? I'm a prisoner too. Human. My name's Danny. There is nothing you can do. This is my memory. This is my truth. It repeats forever. Danny sat down in the ash. What was this place before it burned? The woman stared at him. What? The village. What was it like before? What did it look like? It was home. Her voice cracked. Green fields. Blue river. My mother's cooking. My sister's laughter. Can you see that? Can you remember what it looked like? She closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the ash began to change. Green pushed through the gray. The burning buildings rebuilt themselves, piece by piece. The screaming faded into birdsong. I can see it, she whispered. I can see it again. That's dreaming, Danny said. You don't have to live in the worst moment. You can visit the good ones too. The Tessithi woman opened her eyes. Her village stood around her, whole and beautiful. Tears ran down her face. How? She asked. Practice, and knowing that you have the power. Your mind, your rules. Danny spent hours moving through the connected minds. The karate soldier learned to dream of his children laughing instead of dying. A Pellan scientist discovered she could build equations in the air, solving problems she had abandoned years ago. A young Dreth warrior, barely an adult, found he could dream of open skies instead of the dark cell that held his body. Word spread through the prisoners. The human was teaching them something impossible that on the station's physical level. Strange things began happening. Guards reported unusual readings from the detention block. Prisoners who had not spoken in years were mumbling in their sleep, and some were smiling. The psychic network, designed to amplify suffering, was carrying something else entirely. Hope was contagious. Morith felt it first. He was reviewing reports when a wave of warmth washed through his mind. For one brief second, he saw a sunrise over mountains, felt peace settle into his bones, experienced something he had no name for. Then it passed, and he was left shaking. The human is broadcasting, he told Paleth. His dreaming is infecting the network. Should we disconnect him? Morith hesitated. Disconnecting would require admitting failure. The hegemony did not tolerate failure. No, we must break him properly. I will request additional resources. But even as he sent the request, guards throughout the station were experiencing unauthorized dreams. A weapons officer dreamed of his childhood pet. A pilot dreamed of swimming in warm water. A communications technician dreamed of her grandmother singing. None of them had dreamed pleasantly in decades. Inside Danny's mind, Seleth was building a garden. Flowers bloomed in colors that did not exist in reality. Trees grew in shapes that defied physics. A small stream flowed upward because she decided it should. Is this what humans do every night? She asked. Some of us. Not everyone practices lucid dreaming, but everyone has the capacity. Danny watched her work. You're getting good at this. I never knew this was possible. We are taught that the mind is a weapon. Nothing more. Maybe that's why your people hurt so much. You never learned to play. Seleth stopped creating. Her 4 eyes met Danny's. If I help you escape, what would you do? Danny considered the question carefully. I'd keep teaching. Not just humans, but everyone who wants to learn. Imagination should not be a weapon. It should be a gift. The hegemony will never allow it. The hegemony can't stop dreams, Danny said. That's the thing about imagination. Once someone learns how to use it, you can't take it away. You can lock up their bodies, but their minds are free. Seleth was quiet for a long moment. I will help you, she said finally. I will help you teach the galaxy to dream. And somewhere in the station, a Varanthi child having her scheduled combat sleep experienced something unprecedented. She dreamed of a garden where flowers bloomed in impossible colors. She woke up and did not scream. Supreme Inquisitor Vareth arrived on the 7th day. She was ancient even by Varanthi standards. Her gray skin had faded to white. Her 4 eyes clouded with age, but her psychic presence filled the station like a storm. Warriors who had conquered planets knelt when she passed. Morith, who had broken 10,000 minds, bowed low and did not rise until commanded. Show me this human, Vareth said. Her voice was soft and terrible. Danny looked up when the cell door opened. He was thinner than before, his body weakened by days and the neural interface, but his eyes remained calm. He had been teaching dreams to prisoners across the station. 40 minds now knew how to build instead of just suffer. You are the one causing disruption, Vareth said, studying him. You are the one who dreams. Guilty, Danny replied. Vareth sat in the secondary interface without ceremony. I have broken species that no longer exist. I have shattered gods. You are nothing. Maybe, Danny said, but I'm nothing who learned how to have good dreams. That's got to count for something. The connection established. Vareth entered his mind like a hurricane. Danny's cabin exploded. His park crumbled. Every safe space he had built over the past week was torn apart by sheer psychic force. Vareth did not use techniques or methods. She simply overwhelmed everything with raw power. Danny found himself in darkness. Not the kind he could transform, not the kind he could reshape. True darkness, the absence of everything, including himself. You see, Vareth's voice surrounded him. Your tricks mean nothing against true strength. I do not need your fears. I simply erase you. Danny felt himself fading. His sense of self was slipping away. This was different from the nightmares. This was annihilation. But even in the darkness, a small thought remained that he had promised to teach. He had promised to share. Danny reached out. Not with power, not with resistance. He reached out with memory. The warmth of his mother's hug. The smell of rain on summer grass. The sound of laughter from friends now gone. The feeling of hope when watching a sunrise. That he offered these things to Verith. The darkness flickered. "What are you doing?" Verith demanded. "These are meaningless fragments. They're not meaningless to me." Danny's voice was faint but steady. "They're the best parts of being alive. I'm showing them to you because I think maybe you've never seen them before. I have seen everything. I have lived for 800 years. Have you ever had a good dream?" The question hung in the darkness. Verith had conquered worlds. She had broken minds beyond counting. She had served the hegemony with perfect loyalty for centuries. But she could not answer that question. The darkness around them shifted. Danny was not fighting. He was not reshaping. He was simply sharing, letting his memories flow into the void like water at a beach at sunset, warm sand between his toes. A dog running toward him, tail wagging. A song his father used to sing. The first time he successfully flew in a dream, soaring over mountains he had never seen. Verith tried to reject these images, but they were not attacks. They could not be blocked. They were gifts, freely given, requiring nothing in return. "Stop," she said. Danny kept sharing. A child's laughter, a grandmother's cooking, the feeling of being truly understood by another person, the simple joy of creating something beautiful. "Stop." Verith's voice cracked, and then Danny showed her something impossible. He showed her a dream of the future. Not a prophecy, not a vision, just a hope. Varanthi children playing in fields, laughing without fear. Warriors putting down their weapons to build instead of destroy. A galaxy where psychic gifts created beauty instead of suffering. "This isn't real," Verith whispered. "No," Danny agreed. "It's a wish. But wishes can become real if enough people believe in them." The darkness shattered. They stood in Danny's cabin. The fire crackled. The sunset glowed. Two chairs faced each other, and for the first time in 800 years, Supreme Inquisitor Verith sat in one of them. Her hands were shaking. "What have you done to me?" she asked. "I showed you what you were missing," Danny said gently. "I'm sorry it hurts." Outside the mindscape, in the physical world, Morith made his decision. He raised a plasma blade and approached Danny's body. If the human died, this infection would end. The dreams would stop. The hegemony would continue. Seleth stepped between them. "Move aside," Morith ordered. "No. You would die for this creature. I would die for what he teaches." Seleth's 4 eyes were steady. "I would die for the chance to dream." The standoff lasted only seconds. Then alarms filled the station. Human ships had arrived. The rescue was beginning, but the true rescue had already happened inside a cabin made of memory and hope. Verith emerged from the mindscape. She looked at Danny's sleeping form, then at Morith's raised weapon. "Lower your blade," she said quietly. "Supreme Inquisitor, he must be—" I said, "Lower it." Morith obeyed. He had no choice, but he watched Verith walk away, and he saw something in her ancient eyes that terrified him more than any human ever could doubt. 6 months after his rescue, Danny stood before a crowd of 300 students. They came from 12 different species. Tessathi and Karate sat beside Pelin and Dreth. Former enemies shared benches, united by something none of them had imagined possible before. They had come to learn how to dream. "The first lesson is simple," Danny said. "Your mind belongs to you. No one else gets to decide what happens inside it." The Dream Academy had been Seleth's idea. She had defected to human space the day after Danny's rescue, bringing with her every secret of Varanthi psychic warfare. Now she stood beside him, no longer an inquisitor, but a teacher. "Many of you were tortured," Seleth added. "Many of you lived in nightmares for years. We cannot erase that pain, but we can teach you to build something new." The students began their training. Some learned quickly, constructing simple shapes and colors within hours. Others struggled, their minds still trapped in old patterns of fear. Danny and Seleth worked with each one individually, never rushing, never judging. News of the academy spread across the galaxy. The Varanthi hegemony declared war on the human alliance, but their greatest weapon had been neutralized. Prisoners who had learned to dream could not be broken by mind combat. Former victims became instructors, spreading the technique to every species willing to learn. Danny became a legend. They called him the Dreamer. He hated the title, but he understood why it stuck. For millions of beings, he represented something they had never known. The possibility of a peaceful night's sleep. 3 months after the academy opened, a Varanthi ship arrived at the border. It carried no weapons. Its crew requested asylum. They were children. 17 young Varanthi, none older than 12, had stolen a transport and fled hegemony space. They had heard rumors of a place where people learned to dream without fear. They wanted to know if the rumors were true. Danny met them at the landing pad. They looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. Every adult they had ever known had taught them to fear, to fight, to break others before being broken themselves. "Welcome," Danny said simply. "You're safe here." The smallest child, a girl with gray skin and 4 nervous eyes, stepped forward. "Can you really teach us to dream good things?" she asked. Danny knelt to her level. "I can teach you how, but you'll be the one doing the dreaming. All I do is show you that it's possible." The children joined the academy. Within weeks, they were building gardens and mountains and impossible oceans inside their own minds. They laughed for the first time in their lives. They played. They created things that had no purpose except to be beautiful. Selith watched them one evening, tears in her ancient eyes. "We were never allowed this," she said. 800 years of Varanthi history, and no one ever thought to teach children how to imagine. "Maybe that's changing now," Danny replied. Reports filtered back from hegemony space. The infection of pleasant dreams was spreading despite every effort to contain it. Soldiers refused to fight, unable to face enemies they had dreamed of befriending. Inquisitors found their powers weakening as their own minds learned to hope. Civil unrest grew as citizens demanded the right to dream freely. Varith had not been seen since Danny's rescue. Rumors said she had retreated to a remote planet, unable to lead after what she had experienced in his mind. Morith, however, had been captured during a failed offensive. He sat now in a cell on the academy station, refusing all food, all contact, all attempts at communication. Danny visited him anyway. "You destroyed everything," Morith said. His voice was hollow, defeated. 800 years of order. 800 years of purpose. Gone because one human learned to have pleasant dreams. "It wasn't about destroying anything," Danny said. "It was about showing people they had a choice. There is no choice. There is only strength and weakness." "Then why are you still alive?" Danny asked gently. "If strength is all that matters, why didn't you die fighting?" Morith had no answer. Danny sat down outside the cell. "I'm not going to torture you. I'm not going to break your mind. But I'm going to sit here every day and tell you about my dreams. Maybe eventually you'll want to try having one of your own. I am 200 years old. I have never dreamed pleasantly. There's always a first time." Months passed. Danny kept his promise, visiting every day, talking about sunrises and music and the smell of rain. Morith listened in silence, but he listened. One night, a guard reported something unusual. Morith had been making sounds in his sleep. Not screams, not the standard combat nightmares. He had been humming. Danny smiled when he heard the news. The war would continue for years. The hegemony would not fall easily. Many battles remained to be fought. Many minds remained to be freed. But somewhere in the galaxy, a little Varanthi girl lay down to sleep. She closed her 4 eyes and let her mind drift. She found herself in a small wooden cabin. A fire crackled. A sunset painted mountains gold. A strange alien with only 2 eyes sat in a chair by the window, sipping something warm. "Welcome," the human said. "Want some coffee?" The girl had never tasted coffee. She did not know what mountains were or why sunsets were beautiful. But she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was safe. She sat in the other chair and smiled. For the first time in her life, she was home.